All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. This is Facebook Analytics Masterclass, lesson number 2, talking about Facebook Analytics Mastery Tips. Hopefully, everybody got a lot out of the first lesson, that you did your homework. I know Andrew had tons of questions, answered lots of them, probably answered all of them, knowing the way Andrew is. And I know that a lot of probably the questions that were coming up we will be covering today. So I'm looking forward to getting this rolling. Andrew, you there?
I am here. What's up, everybody? Very
All
excited to be with you again.
right, why don't you take it over, bud?
All right, cool. Well, hey, everybody. Hope you're doing awesome. Hope you're having a great day. I am super excited to get into just the best of the nerdiest for the session number 2. Also, just greetings to my friend Tom, who just tweeted me, said he's got a bowl of popcorn there. My friends Maureen and Stephanie, I know you're watching as well. So just thanks for being here. Good to be with all of you. And thanks to all of you that emailed me too. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But all right, course lesson. So we went through these things on session 1. So we went over, overview, some of the analytics, and some of the event source groups and things of that nature. And we are going to kick off into number 2. So remember, I'm here to help. So feel free to email, tweet. Email is a little bit easier, to be honest with you, tweeting questions. But I realize the irony of talking about Facebook Analytics and having you tweet at me, but if you want to, you can. I heard from 21 people. In the Power Hitters Club elite group, I answered some questions there, and got great questions from Omar, from Susan, from, just a bunch of different people. So I wanted to say thank you. It's great to hear from you, and great to kind of see what you're discovering too, because this tool, as we talked about, is so big and so massive that there's a lot of stuff that things I didn't even think about that you could potentially do, even though I spent, basically the last 3 months of my life dedicated to sitting in this tool to make sure that this class was as good as it could be. So anyway, just wanted to say thanks. That's me. This is what I'm what I'm doing, sitting here chatting with all of you. So. Yes, there'll be a recording, just a reminder on that, and that'll be emailed to you. So here we are in the mastery tips. So what we're going to go through today, we're going to go through some questions and clarifications. I'm going to actually bring up some of these questions that many of you actually sent to me, and some potential clarifications there too around maybe the way that something was phrased or we talked about it, and clear that up. And we'll review session 1. We're going to get into funnels, breakdowns, events, overlap, lifetime value, people mastering the drop down, and we're going to talk about the most beautiful graphs, the best graphs, and how to share some of this data, and we'll talk about your homework, and we'll get into the Q&A. So buckle your seatbelts, folks. This is going to be a packed session, and it's going to be hopefully fun. So, all right. So questions and clarifications right off the bat. So first of all, one thing that I did get a lot of feedback about is people looking in the Facebook Pixel dashboard, right, versus Facebook ad data. So you have to go into that Facebook Pixel dashboard we talked about, and that actually shows all events, right? That is going to show every single event on your Facebook Pixel, not just those connected to your ad campaigns. Okay, so somebody sent me an email and said a client of mine has 1,600 leads in Pixel Analytics. Meanwhile, in Google Analytics, GA, the client has 0 leads from Facebook, yet 1,400 from all users. Okay, so there's a little discrepancy here, but that's an important thing to mention, which is, it is actually bringing in, and it's going to fire anytime a lead is generated, whether your Facebook ad generated that lead or not. I had actually 3 different people that, this is a common mistake and not anything to be embarrassed about, that were looking at the Pixel results and they were looking at that as that was potentially tied to their Facebook ad results. And those are 2 separate things, right? The Facebook Ad Manager, that's going to track your events that are connected to the ads that you have been running. And in the Pixel area, it's going to look at basically everything in that Pixel dashboard that has happened. So important clarification there for you. In sharing the Pixel, had quite a few questions around sharing the Pixel. A lot of people saying, This is very, it's kind of annoying. It's, to use one of my favorite words, it's very laborious, And so what benefits, somebody asked me, what benefits do I have in sharing and seeing the pixel in a business manager and being a partner, right? So the benefits really are that without it, you can't create an ESG. You can't create an event source group without having that pixel properly be connected to the business manager. If the client doesn't have business manager and has not shared the pixel into their own business manager, you'll need to guide them through that. So that is, I realize, kind of a pain. That's why I said take screenshots of this if you need to. And the person must own that pixel. So somebody else asked me, even if you own the pixel, even if you started the pixel for the client in their ad account, would you have access to it? And the answer is, unless they've shared it with you, probably not. Now, there are cases that are very technical that you would have access, but in most cases, majority of cases, you would not. So it's still just not enough. So the benefit really is, without it, you can't properly create an event source group. Now, the way that Facebook permissions go, we'll talk about this in just a second, but there are little ways that could happen. Somebody else asked me here on an event on the pixel, on Facebook Analytics itself. It says I'm seeing each of these things 3 times. So I'm seeing each client on the left-hand side will have 3 different things. It'll have it shows the client name 3 times. And what those are is that's actually that there are multiple icons. So there's 4 different icons. There's the event source group icon, which is the one that looks like an alien. I don't have a screenshot of that, but that you can see on the upper left corner of the screenshot. That's the event source group, right? Then there's the pixel, and that's the one that is the one down from that where it says under new event source group. That's the pixel. Then there's the page, which is the page. And then there's a bot one, which is the one that shows the atom there. And so that's a beta that some of you may have, some of you may not have, but that's why it's showing it 3 different times in that one. So that's sort of a clarification around that. All right. So without creating the ESG properly, it'll only pull in the pixel data as well. So basically somebody said, I'm also seeing no difference in the pixel and the event source group data. Why? And because if you're not creating that event source group and putting the page in there with it or putting something else in there with it, then the event source group basically is an exact copy of your pixel data that you're going to look at on your own or independently, right? So there's no difference between that. That's why it's showing those things the same. Omar had actually a great question here. He said there's a small discrepancy, because of the funnel data and it firing on page view and not. So you can see here that he was getting into funnels, which we're going to talk about today. He was getting into segmenting, and we'll talk about that a little bit more today too, and this will become more clear, but he actually did find, and this is something to refer back to after we get through this, that you can download this and watch it again, of basically he had the event was purchases, right, which is a certain percentage, and then he also looked at the funnel and did page views to purchases, and that's a small number there. That's a discrepancy. So this is very nerdy. You can see we're really going into the weeds in this session right off the bat, and there's a small difference there because I think likely because it's firing on a page view, and some of the other events that could take place are not necessarily firing that page view. Most would fire a page view, but some potentially would not, which is why that number would be different. I'm actually verifying this right now with Facebook Representative. I'm also verifying the currency one, the question that we had about that, or if you were using your Facebook purchase data was in another currency, not USD, would it show in Facebook Analytics under that new currency? I have both of those things into actually a representative at Facebook, the guy we mentioned, or the team we talked about last time. And so I will, if you have questions about that, please email me and follow up, and I will let you know as soon as I get an answer. Somebody actually brought up a good one, which is a little bit confusing. I think helps frame the discussion a little bit too, which is within the analytics tool, it's the personal account connection. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, not the business. I actually don't know, and I do not have, this is another one that sits with them, why this is the case. My guess why the personal connection is there is because under the way permissions work, your personal one holds a little bit more data. So it's funny because you have to go into the business manager, get everything done right via the business manager, and then when you come in and are using the event source groups, your personal name shows up in the upper right-hand corner. So I think that's potentially a bug, and I think that's something that I had noticed, and it just was like, that's weird, because if you try to click into your business, it actually just goes blank. So just something for you to know, that if you find that and you're like, this is weird, know that we are on it, and I will get an answer on that one, and potentially I could even write a little email to you if I hear about this, and John can email it out after once we find out about some of these pieces. So let's review. Hopefully you built a few dashboards, which would be pretty cool. Hopefully you enjoyed that. One thing that I did want to say, an immediate pro tip here, is on a lot of these different graphs and charts that we're building with Facebook Analytics, you have the ability to pin almost any data to a dashboard. The dashboard function is actually in beta. So it's not yet out of beta, but it's currently still being tested. So you can build dashboards. You can't put every piece of data on there. You can put some, but I wanted to mention that as a pro tip. It's kind of cool if you're looking to build that out and start sharing more things with a particular client. So last time we went through some of the navigation. Today we're going to get into funnels, breakdowns, events, overlap, lifetime value, people, and we'll get into even more around segmenting and things like that. All right, so let's talk about funnels. My personal favorite. So funnels, basically, if you go in, this is the screen that you see. It says funnels are a series of events you choose that help you measure the customer experience. So this is really, if you use no other things and you say, Andrew, this course was great, but I'm only going to use one thing, and that's funnels. That's completely a reasonable answer, because funnels is really the one that holds, to me, the most value. So when you hit that create funnel button, you get down to the screen that you see below. It says add funnel step. So once you begin adding that funnel step, you can actually see all of the things that you've pulled into your ESG, right? So you brought in these via your event source group. I also just like saying ESG. It makes me feel cool when I'm saying ESG. So when you brought that into the ESG, no big deal that you guys know what that is now, since we together are kin in this nerdery of Facebook Analytics. You can see all these things, and you can choose any number of steps that you want, which is great. You can say, okay, I want to look at people that have done one thing and then done another and then done another. You can also...
Andrew, can I interrupt real quick?
Absolutely.
Because it's something I stumbled on too the other day when I was going through my analytics, and didn't realize I was in a different event source group, or ESG, until I pulled up those options in add funnel step. Know that those options are not going to be the same for everybody. So if, for example, you're not seeing add to cart, it's because you have not added the add to cart pixel event to your website, or you're not even looking at your pixel event source group right now. So whether there's conversations read, messages sent, that time, you have to have your page connected in order to get that in there.
That's absolutely correct. And if these are going to be different for everybody, right? And if you have a Shopify store, you have some other coding that's been in there. We'll talk about looking at some of these, I would say, erroneous events that are under this as a funnel step, right? So these are going to be different for everybody. I would say the other thing is the ones that are related to a page, those are only going to be here, and if you've properly kickstarted, as we talked about in session 1, that page pull, right? So I think that's a really important clarification, that these aren't going to be uniform for every person. So you can see that what I built here is page views and add to cart. So that's basically what I was looking at for this particular person. Okay, so what you get is, you get, first of all, the overall completion rate. Okay, you get the amount of time that took somebody, which I think is really interesting. And you get the bar chart, and you get the the numbers below. So it gives you an idea of what that number looks like. Now, in case you're wondering on performance, the overall conversion rate of page view to add to cart, you have 16% of people adding something to cart within 3 minutes. That's on the median. That's very good. So that's kind of an interesting thing to point out. Another thing is, you can set a time to complete that funnel. Okay, so you can say, I want it to be within 5 minutes, an hour, a day, or you can customize it. And what this does is it only includes people, users, I should say, who complete all steps of the funnel within this time limit, right? So if you want to, basically the example here, if you want to see the number of users who convert in less than an hour within the last 7 days, you could select the 7-day range in a 1-hour time limit. So this is, again, almost, to me, this is one of these things that's like, wow, that's an insanely cool feature. I don't know when I would want to know that necessarily as in terms of practical things. I mean, I'm sure many of you watching this could see that. I mean, it's like, I've never been like, I wonder how many people converted within a certain time period. But it is interesting because it's one of those things that the data now shows us that time period. So if you can optimize that, right? To me, it's not necessarily what it shows in the retroactive, but once you get this data and start making changes on your website, if you can take that median completion time from 3.5 minutes to 2 minutes, that's an incredibly great optimization that you're making. So that's kind of a cool thing that I think is important to point out, that you can set that time to complete. A pro tip on funnels, look at the difference in percentages of users and how long it takes for them to complete that step. So this gets to what we have in website custom audiences of the top website custom audiences, of the top 25, 5, and 10. This goes 25, 50, and 75% of users. And it gives you an idea basically of how long it takes them to complete each step. And this is just if whatever you're doing within funnels, this shows up at the bottom. And it says, look at the difference in percentages of users and how long it takes. In this example, we get the most people add something in 5.9 hours, right? So, but our best people do it in 1.3 minutes. So, to me, the question is, how can we get and convince those other 75% of people to become like our top 25%? So that's a big discrepancy. It's kind of interesting and not something I would have even known had I not looked in Facebook Analytics. One thing, another pro tip, again, this is an easy one to do. If you are working, you have clients, you're internal at a company, or you have agency, you're an agency and have clients. The one that I've shown, certain things now. I've been working with this tool for 3 months, and all of my clients that are big businesses to very small e-commerce companies and other B2B companies, and the one that blows people's minds the most, I don't know about blows people's minds, but makes them sort of validate this, is something like that, or connecting the organic and the paid, right? I mean, that's really what we talked about, that of why in the first session of like why you care and why analytics is worth it. This is, to me, just nuts. I mean, I like it, but people really like someone post comments to page views. So how many people, when they comment on something, get to a page view? And the thing to me that's kind of interesting is what I have in this particular client is this actually is a lot of conversation that happens in the comments. Many of you may have this where somebody's tagging a friend, or and then they're conversing about it. And so this is kind of a measure of that for me. So, and you can of course do reactions, post reactions to page views, and then to add to cart. But I think as a pro tip, try looking at that organic and paid and see what that looks like. I think you'll be very interested in seeing what that looks like. And if there's a large discrepancy, then maybe the audience is off. So I did get a question on funnels, and somebody had gone in here and looked at actually sessions, okay, and said, what is sessions actually within this? And so basically they were looking at sessions and then page views and wondering how they're a little bit different. So sessions shows a group of actions taken by a user on the app or website within a given time period. Okay, so you can look at average session length, you can look at median time spent, and number of sessions. So sessions would be actually a group of actions that would be multiple things that somebody would be doing. So that's really what that is, to clear that up. And I think that's a great question, which is why I wanted to bring it up here for you. So funnels is fantastic. Fantastic funnels, my friends. John, anything to say about funnels before we get to breakdowns?
Other than they're fantastic. No, I feel the same way, that this is that piece of content, the type of report you can get out of analytics that makes it all worthwhile. I mean, you can dig further, obviously, but I think this is usually where I start when I'm showing people the value of Facebook Analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Let's get to breakdowns. All right, so breakdowns allow you to apply parameters, okay, to analyze a specific event. For example, what age are the people that initiate a checkout or add something to cart, and where do they live? So this allows you to really segment data even more, and they kind of help you understand that deeper question, right? So, or the deeper questions that you may have around certain people. We'll talk about some practical applications of this. So the first thing you do is you give it a name, okay? Then you choose an event that you're going to be building that breakdown off of, and then you choose the breakdown. So you see you have 1, 2, and 3, and you can only do up to 3 at this point, and then you hit apply. Okay, so you can start to think about what you want to look at. You can look at the event, which to me purchases is an important one. And you can see, what I did here is I basically looked at age and region. Okay, so what I did is what exactly you want to understand. You can understand the intersection of these data. So you can see basically there's 25 to 34-year-olds, and you can see it very popular in Tennessee, by the way, and what the count is of those purchasers. So where people are really buying, which I think is important. And you can start to look at that. Now, I think if you want to even take this further, you can actually look at a traffic source as a breakdown. Okay, so you can understand where the traffic is coming from, and of course the pro tip on this is using UTM parameters to properly look at some of this. If you're using UTMs of basically, okay, the people that are coming from here, what do they look like, and how do they intersect with some of the other data that you have access to? I think one that has been particularly helpful here, I have traffic source. I do like this. I think it's kind of interesting, and comparing it to your Google Analytics data. So self-referral means, they go to the website from something that they've connected to. Search engines, direct referral. So kind of interesting to see the way that this does. Self-referral would mean that you're going from one site within your site to another. So that's one part of your site to another is what self-referral means. That's a more complex thing that would happen, so I wouldn't focus on that too much. But I think looking at these and breaking them down by traffic source, that's really an important one that you could do if you're using those UTM parameters. So, excuse me, breakdowns allow you to dig deeper into any event in relation to the ESG. Some of the most helpful ones for me: purchases, initiate checkouts, page views, post reactions. And in just one graph, I can understand where they are, what they purchased, and where they're located. I mean, I think I can then look at the difference between those people who buy and those who only engage, right? So that's also an interesting one that I like to do. And we did this when I found this particular area in breakdowns for Black Friday, actually the week before Black Friday. We worked with this with another client, and we actually found out some really interesting data, and were able to, transfer that breakdown data to say, okay, of the people that we're targeting that are 25 to 45-year-old people in Tennessee, can we start to segment messaging to these people differently? And we looked at the amount of people that added to cart and what the breakdowns were in region by add to carts, and we found out that a lot more people from different parts of the country, not just from Tennessee for this particular client, were adding things to cart, but the purchasers were coming when people were in Nashville or in Tennessee, which is kind of interesting. So you can start to see some of the things I'm talking about there. All right, events. All right, so events help you see a count month over month of basically the events that are connected to your Facebook pixel. Okay, so and events, and also your pixel and your page, So basically, mostly what events are going to be looked for is, and that you can see Messenger bot on this particular one. It's going to be able to measure month over month the amount of data on a particular event, the today's count, and the amount of unique users that are coming from that, and the event type. Really, what I like to use this for is monitoring baseline performance right? So looking and basically saying, is this increasing, is it not? And I've also used this a number of times with clients to troubleshoot certain events and eliminate events that are unnecessary. So I have absolutely eliminated some things that I'm like, what is this? Like, this client does not need label added. And so we removed that for them. So a lot of times, right, we have the Facebook Pixel Helper. That's a Chrome extension. We talked about that in the question and answer last time. And what you'll do is, you can go in and find out what pixels are where and try to clean that up. And this really helps to start to clean that up on the other side of it. It shows basically, here's a litany of what events you have installed and actually what Facebook is looking at by tracking on your site, which is interesting. So that is looking at events. All right, look at overlap. Okay, overlap. So overlap, so if you're wondering how close your communities are aligned, in communities I mean your website audience to your page audience to let's say you have an app audience, let's say you have the messenger audience, how closely are these things aligned and where is there overlap? So it really helps you to see where the overlap is between different parts of your ESG. And technically, obviously, then within your marketing funnel, if you're looking at your page separately, then you're looking at your pixel. So that I find really fascinating. And an overlap example you can see in this one, there is only a 3.72 overlap between the website and the Facebook page. Okay, so what does this mean? I mean, to me, what this means is it actually shows that there's a misalignment, right? So a client of ours has an app where most of the leads come in, and only 12% of those users were also website visitors. So, in other words, to me, there's a problem in message alignment, right? The people they have this app, they're getting all these leads coming through, and they're totally different audiences using the website and using the app itself. And so to me, there's something that we're missing there because there should be more of an overlap here. So in this one, the website and the Facebook page, the fact that there's only a 3.72 overlap between this, what am I not doing here, right? This is an example, to be totally candid for me. This means that I'm not doing as good of a job taking care of my Facebook page fans and making sure that they are both seeing content from us and bringing them back into the site and then re-engaging them. And it also means that the people that are my page fans are probably not that quality. So if you looked at this for johnloomer.com, what do you think your number would be, John? I would say it's probably north of 70%, don't you?
In terms of overlap from web to Facebook.
In terms of overlap, in terms of web to Facebook page, yeah.
Actually not that high, but that's also because of the high number of organic referrals I get from Google.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well then that's a really good point to bring up. That's a good clarification. That could also be a part of it. Sure. Yeah, so I think it shows opportunity. It shows some of the referrals coming from Google, but I think that's an important one to point out. All right, now lifetime value is my second favorite. Aside from funnels. And lifetime value is a calculation that I will say, and maybe you have experience with this in your business, but it is something that a lot of e-commerce business owners aren't 100% sure about, right? They're like, lifetime value. I don't know what it is yet. I don't feel like I've been in business long enough, and so it's a little bit confusing. And I tell you, in Silicon Valley or with other high-growth companies, some of you listening to this, Kendra, my former coworker, is taking this course. Kendra, actually, she and I worked on a lot of clients together, and she knows this, which is lifetime value, frequently measured and discussed because it provides cushion on the cost per conversion, right? So, for example, if an average order value is $50, okay, many business owners say, I need to acquire customers at below $20. So a lot of people say, look, my average order value of my company is $50. I need to make sure that my cost per acquisition on Facebook is below $20. Okay. This calculation, though, doesn't consider the lifetime value. So in Silicon Valley and a lot of these high-growth companies, lifetime value is a major part of the calculation. And so let's say for the same company, somebody knows that their LTVs are $75. Okay, so let's say that their lifetime value of a customer, their average order value is 50, but they're good at bringing them back and reminding them to make a purchase. So their lifetime value is 75. Therefore, they're willing to pay $50 to bring in a customer because in the long term, those users are more profitable. For those of you that are watching the stream in Power Hitters Club Elite on this, I posted a graph there that I thought was really interesting for a client that I just looked at because I, was kind of curious, and we actually found out that the value of a customer over 12 weeks almost doubled. So we were really good at bringing that lifetime value up. So let's get into this. So it basically provides you a more detailed understanding of what we call your nurturing sequence, right? So how good are you at, one, taking care of the people that have already bought from you, and two, convincing somebody over time that they should, buy your product. So Facebook defines this as it measures the value of users based on revenue that was generated over time, starting with an initial interaction. It's many times based, the initial interaction is as a page view, web view, an app install, or like I said, it's just the first time somebody interacts with you. And the lifetime value can be looked in daily, weekly, or monthly intervals. So this shows you that this particular client, you can see, is getting higher over time. And you also have the ability to look at pay users, and we'll talk about that in a minute, versus all users. So in this example, okay, this graph shows that in weeks 9, 10, 11, and 12 were when we did the best job of providing the most value. And the reason for that for this particular client is because we actually started a different messaging sequence with better deals. So they basically were around, we tried to convince them to buy over a period of time, and then actually we increased that and made the deal sweeter, which is why that goes up. I think it's a couple important points to go over here. One is weighted average. Okay, so a weighted average is the average of all values in a single week weighted by the number of people in each cohort. This is going to make sense in a second as we look at cohorts, but that's basically the segments of dates. And so it basically removes, if you have a lot of traffic one week and not that much traffic the next week, it removes some of that bias that the data could potentially have. And the average is the sum of values in a single week divided by the number of cohorts. So your site traffic, as I said, the amounts may vary, so using that weighted average I like, which is why Facebook has it there. So if you scroll down in lifetime value, there's, you're going to see this graph. And so this is kind of an interesting one. What happened in August and early September, right? There's tons to discuss here. So you can see that what happened in August and early September was we did a good job of getting people in, and then in week 10, we really made them more valuable, and the darker that gets, the more valuable that person becomes. And then you can see in August and early September, I would say late August now and early September, you can see that $1.62.95. You can see that the value dropped significantly in this period of time, and we basically ended up 10 weeks later with a $2.50 lifetime value versus what we were doing before, $4.40. And then you look down to October 30th week, right, and these are all cohorts on the left-hand side. You look into that, and it's $8.38. So what happened that week? Well, for this particular client, we were running different deals and different types of deals, and so that's kind of an interesting one. And what I did is when I found this out, I went back and looked at the email efforts and how we were basically over time taking email as well as kind of lining that up against our Facebook data and our Facebook ad efforts at that time, and finding out kind of the differences in correlation between those different promotions. So that's really the great value of lifetime value. Now, you can also differentiate between customers and non-customers. Okay, so you can see where it says all users and then it says paying users. So you can differentiate between that by toggling between those. And then the paying users only includes people that have made a purchase, which I think is pretty interesting, because then you can see only those people and you can look at their weighted average over time. So, my pro tip on this is use paying users to customize the data and then layer in the city. And what we did is we actually did this for a big e-commerce client of ours, and we actually held pop-ups then in 3 of the cities that were listed where we had basically the best lifetime values over time. So kind of an interesting use case, something that you could probably also use breakdowns for, right, to find out and look at. So yeah, kind of an interesting one there with lifetime value of looking at those all and paying users. All right, now we're going to get into the People tab, which is awesome. And the People tab basically provides a data overview and allows you to look into any of the subcategories that you're reviewing. So this is what the default data gives you. The People tab to me is an opportunity for you to potentially use segments, which we're going to talk about and get into that as well, and make sure that you're kind of looking at things. But you can see here you have channel, you have country, language, and city, and highlights. So you can see, the age and gender. And you can see basically what the ages of these people are. You do also get some demographic data and behavioral data, and again, this is probably in most countries for those of you that are watching, and if it's not, this is one of those where the international audience potentially could be at a disadvantage here. But it's nice to know the demographic data for behavioral stuff, right? So you can look at basically, okay, I want to look at my demographic breakdown of page fans or my pixel or my entire event source groups. This is where using one of those things independently could be potentially more valuable for you. So kind of an interesting one there in demographics. It also displays page likes, which I think is great. It displays where you're over-indexed. And so you can see here the audience that I was targeting here, they're 4% over-indexed on Amazon, and 2.7% over-indexed on Samsung Mobile USA, which is fine. I mean, these are pretty big Facebook pages, so it's not a huge win for me. This is a bigger client, so it's not that interesting or helpful. But if you're working with a smaller company, this could potentially be really helpful for you and see where there is potential overlap. And as soon as I found this, actually, I have switched now the way that I do targeting internet interest research, So everybody does different types of targeting, right? Most cases we're using lookalike audiences, we're using behavioral targets and things like that. What this allows you to do is basically look at your interest stuff differently. And so now what I do is I go in and look at the event source group and I pull the page likes where I'm over indexed from analytics. Then I go in and pull that demographic data on analytics as well, and I take those two things and then I put them into Audience Insights, which is a tool that if you're not sure what that is, John has blog posts about it, and it's an interesting one because it allows you to basically do it's a free market research tool within your Facebook ad account. We can talk more about that if you want if people have questions about that. But basically, I like to build that out, and then I test them into what I call tiered interest segments. So I basically take, okay, the pages that I'm the most overlap with, where I'm over-indexing more, I'll pull those into a tier 1, and then I'll create tier 2 and 3. And these are probably what I'm thinking how they're going to basically perform at that time. So this is a pro tip of kind of how I start to do interest targeting to make it as effective as we possibly can. John, anything about that?
No, and actually the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about some of this demographic information people, is it's just like Audience Insights, and that's yet another tool that not enough people are using. And I often hear from people who ask, yes, I would love to be able to target a large email list and a large Facebook audience and a bunch of traffic with a website custom audience, but we got a brand new business. Where do we start? Or relatively new and small. And some of it's doing this type of research, finding what are the pages that your current audience actually likes, or what's the demographic data, and using that either within analytics or Audience Insights. So it's a real good strategy.
Awesome. You can also look at the technology that comes from people, so it gives you an idea of some of the device model and things like that. To me, the device OS, not iOS, is the best. Really, because to me, if you're starting to get into real optimization on some of your campaigns, you may find out that your most valuable people are actually iOS users, or you're really seeing a lot of value from Android versus iOS. So you can split that at the ad set level. It's not something that I recommend right off the bat. That's really for a more advanced advertiser, and a lot of you are that. So maybe you've tried that and that's been helpful to you. And then finally, you can really get into the household and the purchase data. So you can look at basically, and you can see it says 37. Household income 37.9, 38% of that people match. So this stuff to me it's cool, it's helpful. It's not incredibly helpful, but I think it does basically it's the cherry on the top of the icing, I think is a good way to put it, right? So you're combining this data along with behavioral targets. So if you know that, okay, 38% of the people that matched under my event source group make, you can see the range between $50,000 and $250,000, which is the majority of people. You can start to refine that more. You could probably start to look at okay, there's 20% of those make $50,000 to $75,000, so you could start to refine that a little bit, and make the behavioral targets more powerful. All right, so let's get nerdy. Let's stretch it out a little bit. Kind of, take a break here. All right, so let's get nerdy here. Talk about mastering the drop down. Okay, so one of the things that you've noticed, no doubt, right, looking at Facebook analytics, is there's a lot of drop down menus. There's actually an absurd amount of them, and it's a lot of customization that you can do. So in the activity area of almost every graph, there's multiple drop downs you can use. First one we're going to talk about is segments. Okay, and segments we've mentioned briefly, but it allows you to use segments to learn about your customers in different ways, and allows you to view almost all of the different menu items that we've gone through and view a segment of that particular audience based on a number of different things which we're going to talk about. Now, a little pro tip before we even get to talk about segments is you can actually create custom audiences directly from segments. So if you have a segment you've pulled out, they're based on events. This is another way you can create a custom audience by using that in the upper right-hand corner, which is kind of cool. So a little pro tip for you there. All right, so segmenting users, you can segment them by events, demographic, device info, app install source, and web parameters, okay, domain, UTM, and more. So you can really segment these by almost anything. And the two that I use most are event and web parameters, right? These are the ones that allow me to segment out my purchasers and those that have added something to cart, and you can customize it that way. The web parameters ones allow me to see traffic source by UTM and filter. Also, you can look by direct, referral, or social network. So this is some of the customizations that are possible when you're segmenting users. And of course, direct traffic behaves very differently than my social traffic, which is something to point out. So you can see here under web parameters, which is one that I know that a lot of you asked about last time, you can go by a number of different things. Go by current domain, URL, referral URL, traffic source by search engine, so many different things. UTM, you can get to content medium, name, and source. Okay, so when you're starting to build these segments under web parameters, there's an incredible amount of things that it's able to pull out. If you want to only look at people that are from a specific medium or a specific source, you can, or even a term is another one you can use. So I'm going to actually just pull this up a little bit to give you kind of a video of using that segment. So basically you come in here, you creating the new segment, it drops down this menu. You can look at basically, okay, I want to build an event of people that have done something in particular, and you can see there's an include and an exclude button. So you can include or exclude those people, and then it tells you what percentage of that of your total audience of the users that actually covers. You can then look at, okay, I want to add a condition. I want to basically say I want to make sure that they are this and this, right? So you can see exactly what I'm saying here. They're basically able to layer these things together, and it operates very similarly to website custom audiences, right? It's something that that we see when we're kind of creating those I would say more advanced custom audiences that you're saying, okay, I want to say somebody that's gone to this page and not this. You can also actually, this is an older screenshot, but one I thought was kind of interesting of how the product evolved, so I kept it in here. And this is, you can actually compare segments as well. So you can actually compare them. You can see on the top the comparison, and that comparison tool is just right next to where you're building the other segments. So you can compare them to kind of see how they differ, which I think is pretty cool looking at the segments. You can also segment by traffic source, okay? So you can say, and we've talked about this a little bit, but you can really look at this, and I think this particular thing, this is really valuable of showing, okay, direct, let's see, how does Facebook define that? I found this on their developer website, which I thought you guys would really like, which is, okay, how do they define traffic source by social network, right? And self-referral, right? Talked about that before. A person clicks a link on a website, it's taken to another page within your site. So that's kind of how you can start to build these things out if you're interested in that segment. Most of you are probably going to be interested in the segment difference, or comparing the segments of direct versus traffic source by a social network. That's kind of an interesting one that, you know, I've been looking at for clients, and that's something that probably you will want to look at the comparison of as well. John, anything to say about this?
Yes, this segmenting, way underappreciated and buried, because here's the thing. A lot of this you can sort of create website custom audiences, but it's actually much, much easier here. So an example, when creating a segment, and you want to create a segment, you know, based on the referral, based on the search engine, if you do it in a website custom audience based on a referral, it's not going to automatically pull up options of where people have actually come from. Here with analytics, it does. Or if you want to create a custom audience of people based on the actual search that they made on your website, and you have to enter the search string, typically when you're creating a website custom audience, it doesn't automatically preload your options. It's like what people have actually searched in your site. Here, again, within Facebook Analytics, it does. It's incredibly valuable. That's one little very buried tidbit.
Yeah, I think that's actually really true. It brings it up. It'll bring up a lot of them. It starts to give you a list, which is cool. It basically is pulling from the database, right? It's pulling from your Pixel database, basically, even though that's kind of a weird concept. It's pulling from that to be able to show that. So I think you're right that it's really powerful, and it is underappreciated because it's not its own item, right? It's not its own menu item. It's up there kind of hidden, like, what's segmenting? What does this do? So there's a lot of unique uses of this particular product. You know, somebody actually did say, there's a couple of questions, basically. So you can't search by a URL term. Somebody said, I want to look at basically under current domain. I want to say, you know, is any of or contains. You can basically say, okay, this person was saying, can I create it so I want to look at only people that have been users that have gone to something on my website that's like, you know, /shoes. Well, it doesn't allow for that just yet. I think that's probably what it's getting to. So the current domain part is, I think, a little bit buggy, to be frank with you. But most of these other things I've used, and they're working really, really well. So just kind of something to point out there. Under the current domain, it's going to allow you to look at certain parts, not all parts of that domain. Okay, so another thing on the drop-down, switching gears a little bit from segmenting, is on the right navigation, and under revenue, which we talked about the last time, and this just disappeared for some reason. What it allows you to do is actually segment users differently. Let me see if I can reload that one. See if this. Okay, cool. So you can see here that it's actually allowing you to look at the average revenue per purchase and other things, and we talked about this a little bit last time. I wanted to mention this because this is really the mastering of the art of the drop-down with Facebook Analytics. A lot of it is not just with segmenting, but is with these particular customizations that each menu item has. So you can start to really mess with a lot of these different things of time interval, the metric. You can see that this one has, you know, under revenue has, a bunch of different segments that are under each of them, excuse me, not segments, metrics that you can pull from. So the reason I bring this up is because really that mastering the art of it is just understanding under each option what's there. I thought about outlining each of these for you guys, but there's too many options to list, and I think it would have been fairly boring. So know that if you're curious about this and you want to customize data more, you're able to. You can, of course, always segment it as well, but there's an important vernacular difference there that I should have a latte and get some more caffeine in me here to make sure that I'm clearing that up. So like I said, under revenue, there's another metric that allows you to do this. You can look at basically, for revenue specifically, revenue, average revenue per purchase, average revenue per paying user. You can look at the time interval. So this, I've already pulled this for clients hourly. I think it's really interesting around Black Friday about when people are online in the last few days and things like that. It can show by cohort breakdowns, etc. I usually look at overall daily revenue, number of unique purchases daily, and I like to look at the average revenue per user to understand average order value. So, I think you can as well. Revenue is one of these that you can pin to your main dashboard. So if you're building a dashboard and you can pin revenue to that and the revenue customization graphs, it's great. I think the other thing to mention that is under the category of mastering the dropdown is choosing your graph type. So if the data allows it, right, in most cases you can also build not just what we have here of just a line graph, but you can build a bar chart as well. And so if that's helpful for you, I wanted you to know that that option is there, and that's what the toggling between those two things is for. So experiment with this feature when creating your dashboards, because you may find that it actually allows you to kind of display that a little bit differently. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to come into the best graphs, the most beautiful graphs that I have found here. There's at least, I think there's probably at least 1,000 combinations of graphs. I've looked at maybe, I've looked at probably at least a couple hundred that I can think of. And I've been using analytics, honestly, for over a month, like religiously using it on my biggest accounts that are spending $100,000 a month plus. Some of them are much, much bigger than that. Smallest, $5,000 a month, just, keeping people that are smaller to see basically which ones I like the best. So if you build this correctly, right, you're gonna find the ones that are most valuable to you and valuable for your organization. I think they're particularly, the ones that I'm going to mention are particularly useful for e-commerce. So just want to bring up that caveat. Okay, so I like to look at, the first one that's my favorite is the average revenue per purchase daily by age. And the reason I like looking at this is I like to understand what my average purchase value is hovering around. So that to me is interesting. And I also like to understand which age range is most valuable consistently and see if there's any outliers. So this graph in particular doesn't show any major outliers. It's in a 7-day window, but this one to me is the my favorite. I want to make sure that things are hovering around 200. So for example, let's take 35 to 44-year-olds, okay, and you look at November 23rd, you can see the dip. And so if that stayed low for a certain period of time, what I have been doing is basically adjusting, and then I've started separate ad sets to that particular audience as a segment of my users to make sure that I'm getting in front of them. The way that optimization works on the Facebook ad algorithm, there's many nuances. One of the things that they're going to do is show the ads to people that are the most likely to convert if you're running conversion campaigns or whatever objective you have. And I think under this, it's important to point out that if you see a segment of users that's low, that means Facebook's not really optimizing for it. And if you know that those people looking at other things are high average revenue people for you, then you may want to segment those out. So that's one on average revenue per purchase daily by age, which I really like. Of course, funnel, right? One of them's got to be a funnel. So I love the page view to add to cart to purchase. I mean, this to me is the bread and butter of Facebook analytics, and I always want to understand the conversion rate on somebody that's brand new, then comes, adds to cart, and then makes a purchase. Okay, so the overall conversion rate is not bad. There's a 5.83, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, overall conversion rate and a 20-minute median completion time on this, which I think is pretty good. But you can see the value in add to cart, which is $16,000, $16,500, and so there's a lot of opportunity there. Right, which I think is kind of interesting in terms of how much value is left in that add to cart when people are kind of thinking about it and how you can bring people through the funnel. So that one is really, really interesting and something that I love to look at this very regularly. All right, we have retention. So we talked about retention in the first session, but the baseline 28-day graph, I've customized a lot around retention, and I actually really like the weekly time interval. I'm looking at retention, which is the baseline one that they show. Because to me, what this tells me is it clarifies how good I am at keeping new users engaged and interested. So you can see that the users I brought in on the week of October 30th through November 5th in that cohort were much less quality than the people that I brought in the weeks before and after. So you can see, look at the 1 week, 4% of those stuck around versus the 11% surrounding them. So you can interpret this, to me, very, there's a lot of different things you can look at here, but that to me shows where I'm doing a good job of keeping them around and not keeping them around. And this is a very small client of ours. You can kind of see some of that data and what it looks like. Retention refined cohort of page views and adds to cart. Okay, so this is essentially, I like to also in the retention look at the condition the event includes page views, add to cart, and then also basically look at those people that have come and added something to cart, right? So that's a small segment of the user base, and it tells me how good I am at taking care then of our best potential customers. I think they're the people that we should be paying most attention to, because obviously we got them to the site and they're added something to cart. So it's only a small, in this instance, 242 users, but it's see how many people stick around. So this one is valuable because it really, this is the beautiful thing about that kind of segmenting along with some of these graphs of really the powerful nature of looking at that segment and understanding how I'm taking care of them. Lifetime value, paying users last 90 days is huge for me. So as I discussed earlier, right, lifetime value, really kind of often misunderstood, I think. A lot of people aren't sure what their lifetime value is. And so this is a thing that can make your efforts look more valuable too, and show, I would say, actually shows the true value of your efforts on Facebook in many cases. So over a 90-day period, this shows me basically what we're doing well and how we're doing during the nurturing process. I mean, this one is not that we do great until week 10 and then what happens? What happens in week 10? So, so how we can kind of fix that, I think, is an interesting one that is an opportunity for this particular client. You can see here, this is basically the lower graph of that. So looking at the cohort data week by week, and you can see basically what you're able to make more valuable over time, which ones and customer segments and cohorts were really the ones you're able to use, really like make them your people over time, which I think is kind of interesting. Okay. We are coming up on the close here. So sharing that data, all right, so some of you may say, how do we share this data, right? The best thing you can do is in the upper right-hand corner, you can share that private URL to anyone you like. Okay, I put a note here that this is going to be changed soon because they absolutely are going to have to make this sharing of the data a lot easier. It's kind of confusing right now, to be honest with you. It's a little bit, why you can't add everything to a dashboard doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and why you can't share all of this data to a client doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So it's clear that this is going to be changed soon. I know it will be changed soon and updated. So this is something you can do, though, if you want to share that private URL. That's a great way to do it. And then the other thing, of course, is you can add a member of your team to the event source group and business manager if you want to share. That way, you certainly could. Okay, all right, so we went funnels, breakdowns, events, overlap, lifetime value, mastering the drop-down, my favorite graphs that we went through, and how to share that data. So your homework off of this session is build a funnel, connecting those organic reactions to page views. Okay, check events and see if there's any events that are firing that don't need to be. And so that's a good one to clean that up. If you're e-commerce, look at that lifetime value and see how it changes, and see kind of what happens week over week there. Build a dashboard and share it with a URL. So, build a dashboard and pin whatever you can to that you think client would find valuable, and then share that with them. And continue experimenting. This is your homework. Let me know what you're liking, what you're not liking, what you're confused about, and shoot me an email anytime, because I can share, John and I can share feedback directly with Facebook, and we can all get better by using this product and learning from one another. So that is your homework for this week. So you're done. This is the phrase that this is my dog Ian Wingrove. This is unleash joy is Gracie's, my wife and business partner's phrase that we use in our Christmas card. So unleash your joy. You're done. Congratulations. You're in the 1% of 1% of users on Facebook that are actually using the Facebook Analytics tool, and you know how to use it, and are going to begin to master it. So congratulations.
All right, yeah, that was awesome, Andrew. I think a key point here is that, look, this tool is incredibly valuable, but incredibly dense. There's a lot there, and there's no better way to find out what's there than just immerse yourself in it and start just poking around. And because this is still a relatively new tool for me, on a daily basis, I'm still finding stuff, well, I did not realize that was there. So definitely, hopefully that this inspired you to start doing that, because great tool. Now, before we get rolling here on questions, just a real quick thing on what's potentially next. I'm still figuring that out. We're wrapping up 2017, thinking about 2018. My plan right now is to have various trainings every 2 months or so, and having a new one. But while I have a working list of the types of topics I would like to cover based on various feedback and whatnot, I still want to know from you, as someone who just experienced this training, what would you like the next training to cover? It would have to be something pretty specific that we can cover in 2 lessons like this one. But I would like to know. So you can tell us here. If you're not thinking about it now, feel free to email suggestions to us at info@johnloomer.com, and certainly looking forward to planning that out. So let's get to the Q&A, final Q&A. I know we have lots of questions once again. And we have some questions here that are not analytics related, and I'll make sure to see if we have time, get back to those at the end, if we're able to get through all the analytics related questions first. Anthony asks, is there a way to add a funnel step that is add click or add view?
There is not at this stage, and kind of what we talked about last time. This is something that Facebook is thinking about. So that's what I can say on this topic, right? That's something that clearly we want, right? I mean, how insane would it be, Anthony, if we could basically say this person viewed an ad, then they did this and interacted organically, added something to cart, like, oh man, it'd be huge. And so that's not far away. I don't know when, but I know that that's something they're thinking about, and because that would just be too valuable to leave on the table.
All right. So, and Derek says, because you were talking earlier about organic and paid. So how do you see your organic versus paid traffic in funnels? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, in funnels, you can basically choose any organic traffic. So to me, you can choose post comments, you can choose post reactions, which is shares. To me, the best one is reactions, because what's the lowest hanging fruit, right? A lot of people react. They're going to like, comment, share, and that's going to include all of that under reactions. So that's the one that I choose mostly around organic. That is part of the funnel, if I'm using organic as part of my funnel.
Hey, and to answer the last question about ads, I mean, one other thing to look at when creating those funnels is if you select, for example, page views, you can refine by web parameters. So
yeah, that's true.
UTM codes. So now I think a misconception about UTM codes is when you use that, it's only going to pull up people who clicked on the ad. well, people can share that and view it organically too. But
That's true.
so at least kind of a workaround there. And Andrew, I think Andrew just asked or answered your question there regarding organic and paid. Ben asked, would multiple page views be included in one session?
Yes. No, they would be separate sessions. Page views would be separate sessions. Sessions in this instance is defined as multiple things, which I think is kind of silly. I've shared my feedback on that, to be honest with you, because I just don't think that makes sense. But
Right.
it's right now. I looked at this morning at actually I think it was yesterday. Somebody sent me an email about that, and I actually looked at that, and it was a great question. And I was like, I think I understand how this is defined, but I want to make sure, and it is multiple things, because it was something like only 30% of my sessions were page views, which I thought was weird because people are taking other actions that aren't just firing page view.
Jeffrey asks, can you clarify user activity versus new user activity?
Yeah, user activity would be people that have been to your site before. New users be that there's no data of that person. So that's the difference between those two things.
Omar asked, can I make a graph of how many times a user has visited my website? So different visits, not page views.
Omar, that's a good question. I don't think that you can refine by frequency that I have found. I don't think so. I think page views is basically only one. It's looking at that one. There may be an option under segmenting that you can look at that, and you can look at basically where it says, segmenting, like John said, is like so valuable. I don't think there's a frequency on there, but some of you too. It's important to mention here. Some of you may have, as we all know, right? Some of you may be in an alpha for something, right? That they're testing in some of this as well. So if you see something that is like a frequency piece, let me know. Or something like that I'm pretty sure we don't have, because it's always good to know.
Yeah, I'm poking around right now. I don't see anything, but like I was saying earlier too, I find new stuff every day, but yeah, I'm not aware of it either.
Okay.
Monique asks, I'm using Google Tag Manager for the tags, and Facebook keeps hanging when I try to publish the tags. If I exit, then it has save the tags and add edit, but I still can't publish, so I don't know how to troubleshoot this. I'm not sure where she's referring to that. That's within Google Tag Manager. Are you following that?
No, I'm not sure on the question there. So feel free to follow up on that one. I'm not sure what you mean, and we can help try to get that solved for you.
Andrew Snow, does Facebook's web browser appear as other values under browser breakdown? That's a good question.
You know what? I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to write that down. Other values. That's a good one. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not going to make something up because I have no idea.
Derek asks, under breakdown, the traffic source for purchases is mostly self-referral, which for him is not very insightful. This is going to be on a person-by-person basis. When I read your question, Derek, I went and checked to see mine. Self-referral for me was about 5% of the overall data there. But I don't know, Andrew, what you see there?
I think it's gonna vary. I think breakdowns can be whatever you want them to be. If that's something that it shows of looking at self-referral, then maybe that segment of or that sort of area of Facebook Analytics isn't going to be that helpful if it's kind of showing some data that you're not really that interested in, or it's not showing you much. So I think it's going to vary by person. Absolutely.
Slavic asks, what would a good benchmark for total overlap percentage be, or target overlap percentage be? I think he's referring back to that Facebook versus Messenger versus website overlap. And kind of like what I was saying with mine, there's just so many factors involved. Like my percentage is actually surprisingly low, but a big part of that is because how much is coming in from Google. But I also have a large email list, so a lot of my traffic is coming directly from email. So I have a hard time saying what a benchmark would be because there's so many factors involved. I don't know what you
Yeah, I think that's difficult with the benchmarking. I think to me, honestly, the thing that you're going to want to look at there is really if it's incredibly low, like the example I showed you with a client, right? One of the things that I just don't think Facebook marketers and just particularly people like that are on this call, I mean, myself very much included in this, I want to be clear, is we don't do as good of a job taking care of our fans, right? It's like, and so a lot of times if you've built that fan base, it's a really valuable targeting group and can be valuable to just nurture them and bring them along. And so to me, the thing I was most surprised on, honestly, with most of my clients is the overlap was very low. And we don't, these clients don't have the site traffic John has coming in and between the Facebook page and the page views. So that to me showed kind of a, or the pixel. It showed a misalignment on my end. It showed basically that I wasn't doing as good a job of building those communities in tandem. And I think that's really more of a thing instead of like what's a good benchmark, because again, like John said, it's just going to vary so much.
Sure. Roman asks, how do you add other channels for overlap? I only see web. Well, Roman, you must only be seeing web because you're looking at, you've added only your pixel to the event source group and not your Facebook page.
Right.
So once you add the Facebook page, it'll include the page and Messenger.
Yep.
Omar, another question. What does the relevance metric stand for as opposed to over-indexed? I think he's referring to the page likes, but I'm not sure.
Oh, on relevance?
Yeah.
On page likes, on relevance, it's versus over-indexed. Yeah, well, that's basically showing the percentage of people that are kind of overlapping between those two things. So it's
relevance is a rank. So basically, they have a ranking. So
yeah, which is how much is probably the relevance on that. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh, the relevance is essentially how relevant that audience is. It's going to rank based on the percentage of overlap and the activity of the communities that they overlap. So basically, if one is, you may have more of an overlap, but it's they may be close. It's going to rank one higher based on the amount of kind of conversations taking place or activity of that page, and organic activity of that page. That'll always choose that over the other if it's got more activity happening.
And Monique, this question, she says, what kind of privacy policy statements do brands using Facebook Analytics need to add? This is much more than standard statements about cookies. But the truth is, you're still using the exact same data. It's the exact same data that you use when you're using the Facebook Pixel for that initial policy statement or privacy statement. So you don't need to add anything additional just because you're using Facebook Analytics. Is the segmentation using time, the last 28 days, is Thomas, a snapshot in time, or will it dynamically roll forward every day?
It dynamically rolls forward. So it's always that's one of the beautiful things about Facebook Analytics is that it dynamically updates by the hour, in many cases by the minute.
Andrew asked, does the funnel breakdown allow for an auto-populating of the most efficient funnel? Interesting.
No, so here's an interesting thing. It doesn't. There is a new segment that's not a new segment. I have to stop using segments because that's a separate thing. There is a feature that some of you may have. I do not have it in any of my accounts. Some of you may have this called Automated Insights, and it basically looks at some of this data within Facebook Analytics and starts to make different kind of things like that, right?
Suggestions, yeah.
Right, yeah. So I don't have it anywhere. Some of you may have it. I have heard about it. I don't know much about it, to be honest. But I know that it's using certain types of data to kind of make inferences of certain things. But yeah, so that's a cool feature that hopefully we'll see soon.
Mike asked, does this data remove our own IP address?
I believe that it probably does, I would think. But if you're going on your site and firing the pixel, it could or could not. You know,
I don't think it does.
I'm going to say I don't think it does. Actually, I'm going to reverse what I previously said.
Yeah, I don't think it does. What I can tell you, because I just stumbled on this the other day, is if you have the Facebook Pixel plugin, I can't even remember. Is it just
Facebook Pixel Helper? Yep.
No. I'm talking about the WordPress plugin.
Oh, okay.
Alex, you know what? I'm actually thinking of instant articles when I think about it. But for that, you can have. I honestly, I gotta go back and figure out what I was looking at, because there was something where you could actually exclude admins, for example, from the traffic information or pixel information. I'm kind of confused on now what that was. I have to go back and look. But here's my main point. Whenever anyone asks that, you as a person should make for such a small portion of the overall traffic that's going to be on your website, that it really, I honestly, yes, it would be nice if it automatically removed you, but if it doesn't, I can't imagine it's going to make a huge difference one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I have a larger EDU client actually, and they have their students use the site, right? They use they go onto that domain, and they actually would be firing the pixel. They are firing the pixel technically, and so we are using segments, and we're segmenting mostly by traffic type, and we're looking at, kind of trying to filter those people out. I understand, in Google Analytics, what a lot of people do is they'd segment out that internal traffic, and that's just, I think, I agree with John. I don't think that you can do that. I didn't see that anywhere I could find, and so now that I'm kind of thinking back on that one.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe it was Pixel Caffeine. I saw that. Hold
Nice.
on. I know I saw it the other day. I would love to be able to find it. I'll keep searching. Do you have any suggestions for a third-party program for Facebook ads like AdEspresso? I mean, I personally don't use any third-party software for that specifically, but Andrew, I don't know what you use.
No, there's a lot of good software out there, right? I think there's a lot of great things that you can use to launch Facebook advertising. I think for me and for John, I can't speak for John, but I would say our situation is similar, which is I want to stay as close to the platform as I possibly can, right? So to me, it's important that I understand, and not through another software, what is changing on a daily basis with the platform. And it really is daily, as many of you know. So that's why we kind of keep it close to the vest.
And by the way, I did find my answer regarding excluding yourself. So I saw this it's Pixel Caffeine is the plugin that I use on that WordPress plugin for adding the pixel to the website. And within it, under General Settings and under Advanced Settings, there's an option, don't fire the pixels that the user is logged in as. You can select Administrator, Editor, Author, Contributors, etc. So I actually did use that, and I applied it for Administrator. So if you use that plugin, that's something you can do. It also shows you that it's possible. So
Nice.
whether it's within Facebook Ads, API, or whatever. So this then would apply to not just Facebook Ads, but to Facebook Analytics, because that's all about whether or not the pixel is going to fire.
Nice.
Easy enough, right?
Yeah, nice.
Andrew asked, is the funnel breakdown for website activity and events only? Or can we include Facebook platform engagement like video views and engagements? I can tell you, I did search for that, by the way. Video views, I didn't find that.
That's not there yet, but it will be, I think. I mean, a lot of this, as we said, right? I think in the first session, it's important to remember that a lot of this is you are honestly now a master of Facebook Analytics, that a lot of other people do not know all of the features of this. And I think now the good thing is that when these things get released, you're going to be able to go in there and do it right away. And so that's going to be something that video views, clearly, why would we not be able to see that? That's something that has to be coming soon because it would be so helpful.
A little off topic here. Erica says, I have $2,500 to spend on an annual campaign. That's annual, so not a lot. I was happy with the results from last year, but want to try something different. How much of my budget should I spend on the new ads compared to the pre-existing ones? I mean, I can just tell you from a personal point of view, it's a lot of unanswered questions there. I mean, if it worked really well, I would say try to learn from what worked well, and probably start with a similar budget. And as if things continue to work well, start scaling up, assuming your audience size can handle it. But any other thoughts there, Andrew?
No, I mean, look, if it did well before, I mean, the first thing is duplicate that campaign or that ad set, right, or those ads, and use them and modify on them with new creative. And if it did well, then you're good. Look at the targeting. Look at what did well there, and you may not have to reinvent the wheel. The other thing I would encourage you to do, if that's an annual campaign and that's small, is to look at when things did the best and try to concentrate your spend in those times. Because that's going to be a more efficient use of the dollars. It's going to allow you to really potentially see a bigger impact in shorter spurts versus a small impact over time.
Brian asked, do you have a training on the different ways to use messenger bots? Good question. So that's actually on my list of potential next topics for training. But otherwise, very minimal in terms of what I've written about so far, just because I actually just started getting exposed to it myself. I mean, I kind of was resistant to messenger bots for a long time, started my own within the last couple months, and certainly learned a lot there. But training could be on the horizon there for messenger bots. Tim says, a tad confused on long-term or lifetime value. The pixel is still there regardless of advertising. How do I segment out to determine the lifetime value of purchases that only came through or influenced by Facebook ads?
Yeah, I mean, there's not that good of a way to do that right now, unless you're using a segment under UTM, right? So right now, to me, the clients that I am working with, the majority of their spends, I would say in most cases, probably 80% plus of their online marketing spend comes from Facebook advertising. And so that's why we're able to make the inferences that we are doing. But generally, it also is just helpful, you can't pull it out from ads, but I'm able to see basically, correlations between really that data of saying, okay, I know that in week 9 I did something different, and I did that in week 9, 10, and 11. You can see the revenue spike in that period of time. One thing that I don't think I think is a big difference in the strategy for me in 2017 from 2016 is the amount of time and energy I spend advertising to previous customers, actually to raise LTVs. I do that because those people are already our customers. They like us. We give them discounts. We show them new products. We do a whole myriad of things with different content and different objectives. And so that's, unfortunately, you can't pull that out totally, but you can see how good you are at bringing people through and seeing that whole picture. Maybe you're running also their search engine marketing ads or, display, etc. And if you're able to see that LTV is increasing over time, then you're doing a good job, and that's a good validation point for you.
Awesome. I think that's all we got right now. If you have any additional questions, certainly feel free. If you've got something that's analytics specific you want to ask Andrew about, you can drop a line at andrew@foxwelldigital.com. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, or you can tweet them, or if you got anything else for me, or any feedback about the training, or about what you'd like to see in future trainings, drop me a message, info@johnloomer.com, or you can also tweet me at johnloomer, or Facebook page, Messenger. You got it all over the place. But otherwise, man, this has been fun. I thought this was. As a topic I'm still learning about as well. I think we're all still learning about. I found this really insightful, and I'm looking forward to taking the next step with Facebook Analytics. I hope you all are much more comfortable with the topic now, got something out of it, and are excited about what you can do today and tomorrow with Facebook Analytics. Andrew, got any final points?
No, thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and you are now a master and have graduated from the school of Facebook Analytics. So go on and start slicing and dicing data and let us know what you find.
Exciting. Thanks, everybody. Again, I'll get that replay out within the next few hours. Until next time, do awesome things. We're out.